Good afternoon, Santa Clarita. You're listening to My Conscious Dad. No Jasmine today. I'm your host, Alex Urbina, right here in your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. And joining me in studio today is my good friend, Riel Andrews. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate you taking the time.
I'm really good, but with that announcement, I'm wondering, am I better looking than Jasmine, or is Jasmine better looking than me?
I don't think you're going to win that one.
No.
Yeah. You could probably give a good run, but I think
I don't know. She's pretty. She's beautiful. Yeah, okay.
So listen, today I want to talk about being a conscious dad. I brought you in because, one, you inspire me with your commitment to be the best dad that you can be. And that, to me, that's the makings of being a conscious dad is that, we're not perfect. But conscious means that we have a commitment to be self-aware, to be aware of the mistakes that we make, to be aware that we can be committed to doing the things that are going to help us be more effective at parenting. And so I just wanted to open up a discussion and a conversation about what are some of the things that both you and I are challenged with, and some of the things that we're excited about and things that we're working on to become more effective as a dad. The first thing that comes to my mind when I think of what am I committed to, what's the main thing that I'm focused on as a conscious dad, is that I'm crystal clear that my kids may need something specific from me to be a powerful leader in the world, to be able to be a competent and assured human being that I help develop and send out into the world to be a contribution, to be a good citizen, to help make a difference in other people's lives, as well as making a difference in their own life, so that they live healthy, prosperous, and powerfully.
Yeah, I mean, what comes to mind as you were getting ready to say it, communication, and then as you're saying that, are we a bore or are we a contributor? So we want to be able to enable our kids to be a contributor, not take from the world. But the first and most important thing that I'm learning is communication, and that's huge. I mean, basically before I met you and started working with you, we were just bodies in a house walking and just passing in the nights, really, on all levels, with my kids. And now getting to as a conscious dad, you starting to realize that I have 3 kids, and each and every one of them are unique. Each and every one of them you can't just come in and just lay down one formula for all 3 kids. It doesn't work, and as a coach, it's the same thing. This morning I have 22 people in the class, or, when I'm coaching football same thing. You can't just, in my opinion, now what I know, before I used to, but it don't work like that. So you got to be conscious and aware and paying attention and hearing and it's not as simple as what I'm learning also. It's not going to happen. It's not going to roll out like this. Dad, I'm hurt. I need your help. No, it's probably going to be the exact opposite. You got to be very, very conscious and aware to almost read between the lines.
Absolutely. Well, the Dad, I'm hurt and I need your help is at the core. It's at the bottom. It's tucked underneath. That's the real message that our kids are probably trying to convey to us, but they won't flat out say that. It's because they don't have the skill set yet. They don't have the ability to communicate honestly, or at least be self-aware to realize that all they really need is your help. So what they'll do is they'll act out in certain ways, and they'll play games. Their ego will play games to try to get you to give them the help they're looking for, but they don't know how to flat out ask you to help them. And so you, as the conscious dad, has to figure out past all the games and get right down to it, and be vulnerable enough and patient enough and conscious enough to sit your son or daughter down and say, son, daughter, what do you really need from me? What are you asking for? And maybe you're the one that has to draw out that request from them. You're the one that's going to have to guide them or facilitate a process to get, shave off all the things that aren't really what they're trying to say, and get right down to what it is that they're actually intending to communicate with you. And that takes some work. It takes effort. It takes a commitment. It takes a certain level of awareness to be able to see all that process and then navigate through that process to create the result, which is getting your son or daughter to communicate with you in an honest and effective way.
Well, I say it doesn't take some work. It takes a lot of work, and it really comes down to, as a father, as a parent. After I did the teen group with you, young adult group with you last week, and I'm still reeling from the moment when you did an exercise called the Truth Line, and it's just sometimes even now when I think about it, it makes me very emotional because there was a group of young adults there, 18 I think, and you asked them, has anybody ever considered committing suicide or tried to take their life, and every one of them stepped forward. That was mind-boggling to me that our kids are at a place right now. So going back to with what you said, that made me think, because one of the things I really value is my time taking my kids to school and my time picking my kids up to school. But prior to you, and even still now, but now I'm conscious of it, trying to fix it, this is what it looked like. It's great. It's my time with my kids, but it'd be like we're driving. He has his headphones on. The other one's on his phone. I got the radio on. We're in a 15-minute drive to school, and there's not a word passed. But, hey, that's great quality time. At least I get to take my kids to school. Now I'm not okay with that because I'm just thinking that and I'm trying to get more creative about asking, I guess they're called open-ended questions, because how was your day was, okay. And then they're back. So you got to get better, because I believe what you say, they've want a lot more. And now what I'm noticing is now that what I'm seeing is they're seeing that I actually care. So they're not giving me those one-word answers anymore. And as a matter of fact, what's funny is sometimes, especially with Marcus, I'll see him on his phone. I'm trying to get more out of him, and he's still giving me the one-word answer. But then after 2 one-word answers, he catches himself, and he goes, How was your day, Dad?
That's right.
How was your class?
Because you didn't give up. You didn't buy into the one-word answers after 1 or 2 and then stop. You kept going. And at a certain point, there's a breaking point there where he now has to see himself being real shallow with you and kind of surfacey. And then in that, he was able to see himself and then kind of readjust and then put the phone down and then now actually engage with you. It was because you weren't, you were determined to continue down that process and be an invitation to get him to open up, turn to you, open body position, eye contact, and really engage with you. And good for you for not taking it personal, because you could have. Right? You could have easily have made up a story that his phone's more important than you, and you could have went on this whole rant, but you didn't. You didn't take it personal, and you just kept asking the questions. You kept staying rigorous with your commitment to engage with him, and finally he responded. That's what conscious parenting is about. That's what being a conscious dad is realizing some fundamental distinctions that keeps you in your power so that you don't get tagged and get all riled up and then making it about him. And then you played the game. I feel you played it correctly because you were able to get him to open up, see himself, and then have a conversation with you.
Yeah, and what you just said, there's another key thing that I'm really noticing now, the tagging thing, because you're right. In the past, I would have got offended or turned into a thing, or I'm realizing now as a parent, we want to fix our kids, or we want them to be a certain way, or we want them to react in a certain way on our time, at our speed. And now I'm learning they're all on their own journey.
Do you know why we want them to be a certain way?
No.
Because we live as though you're supposed to want to talk to me. You're supposed to want to turn to me and ask me for help. You're supposed to be this way. And I think if we're unconsciously operating out of my kids are supposed to be, then we're really shooting ourselves in the foot. Rather than my kid is not supposed to be anything. They're showing up exactly the way they're supposed to show up, because the way they're showing up is feedback to me to look at myself and say, what's missing from me that I'm not contributing in a certain way that causes the fundamental shifts in them that's going to help them be more productive and more powerful in the way that they show up in their life. Does that make sense?
It totally does, Alex. You might have remembered, it was maybe in the past week or so, you remind me, I posted a quote. I take these pictures with my little eyes popping and different quotes. But it said something like, people aren't going to tell you what they think of you, but pay attention to how they're acting to you, because that's something like that. Does that sound? But
the paying attention part is the consciousness. It's you being aware. Is you have to pay attention attention.
But most people don't.
No, because we're looking at how they're responding, and we're interacting with the way that they're responding rather than paying attention to what. Here's another way to say it. Sometimes we're paying attention to what they're saying. We're not paying attention to what they're not saying. And when you're conscious, you're looking at all of it. You're looking at what they're saying, what they're not saying, their demeanor, their mood, the music behind the words. You're picking up on all of that. It's almost like now you put these certain glasses on and you can see things you couldn't see before. You're experiencing things and you're feeling things that have always been there. You just haven't been tuned in to be able to grab all that information and then make a more conscious, more wiser choice as you're engaging in the relationships with the people that you say you love the most.
Well, and what I would encourage, what I'm learning really quick, as just me, as you know, my day, I roll my day. I wake up, I look around, I got another day on this earth. I treat it like it could be my last day. 24 hours ain't enough. But what I'm learning now, and what I'm encouraging any parents out there listening, because they need to hear what you're saying right now, and maybe they hear what I'm saying, because if they don't get this, they may be standing at their kid's funeral, because that's the way. Since last week, when I look at it, there's not enough time. I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to miss that opportunity, because I'm really scared and curious of what's really going on the other side with my kids. When that many kids are stepping forward saying, I've thought about, or I've tried to take my life, I'm like, I'm going, have my kids had that thought? Because, obviously these kids aren't running home to their parents and say, hey, because I'm sure if we pulled those parents that dropped off their kids, I guarantee you they had no idea. Not
only do they have no idea, but 90% of those kids' parents are beautiful human beings and loving and caring and compassionate. And, one would have no idea, but two, they were just they're not aware of that. I'm glad that you were able to get that gift and that it flipped a switch inside of you. Obviously, taking your own life is to the extreme, but everything before that, there's also some red flags in there. Before we actually get to that part, if you're lucky, you go through these other phases, like slowly checking out, slowly shutting off your emotions. You slowly start to drink or use drugs or alcohol to numb out. There's all these red flags as kind of like, signs to say, hey, I'm in trouble. Hey, I need your help. Hey, I'm lost and confused. Hey, I'm drowning here. And as a conscious parent, if you're aware and you have that heightened awareness, you're able to see one of those things and jump in there and start interacting and course correcting accordingly. If you're totally unaware and unconscious, you're one of those people that are going to be knocking on the door of a rehab center or a therapy or maybe at the hospital or at the morgue, because by the time you realize it was already too late.
Well, and let's talk about that, because there's something that's really kind of been on my heart. So let's talk, because maybe you see this and this is a sign. So my middle son, he's pretty, in everybody's face. And I've noticed it in passing by enough that I'm conscious, but even still with conscious, I kind of, that's kind of weird. That's a little different. But still kept on going about my day, but it's about my mind. And here's what I'm talking about. The last 2 days, Nathan's been in a situation where it's not normal for him. He's usually getting in everybody's face, and he's always over. All of a sudden, for the past 2 days, I found him. He's really deep into working in his homework. He's engulfed in there, and you may look at it, if not being conscious, oh, cool, great. Hey, he's finally getting his homework. But I'm wondering, is that great? That all of a sudden he's just becoming a great student and he's all excited, or is that a flag? Is he pulling away, or because it's weird? Does that make a little sense to me? So I'm wondering, is that one of those flags? Because it's caught my attention, but I didn't really know what to make of it. But it's a big difference.
Well, just the fact that you're saying that it's a flag, red flag for you or something to notice, it gives you permission now to turn to him and ask him to go for a walk or invite him to go get an ice cream, and open up a conversation with him and engage with him to check in a little bit further, a little bit deeper, rather than walking by and observing something and grabbing a little bit of information and then making up the rest of it with a story. being conscious and aware is don't make up your own stories. Sit down with the people that you love the most and engage in a conversation so that they can actually tell you exactly what's going on, or you can make them feel safe enough to give you enough information so that you don't have to make up these stories. Because that's really, I think, the part of us that is where we're powerless is when we just grab a little bit of information and we make up stories. And a lot of times these stories aren't accurate, but we live as though they are, and then we respond to them, and then we end up getting ourselves in, some troubles that could have been avoided if we just learned how to communicate honestly, openly, and effectively.
Yeah, it reminds me of, do you remember? And this is a thing, he said, I, as a dad, thought I was being great. I thought I was doing the right thing. Somebody's messing with my little girl. This kid across the street, hit my daughter, and it was about the 7th time. So I went over there and I yelled across the street and I said, you don't, stay around. And I thought, hey, I did a great thing. I stood up for, a week or two later, I hear my daughter say to my wife, well, I don't want to tell Daddy because he's going to go ballistic. So I shared that with you, and you helped me to correct it, because I don't want her to be afraid to tell me something because Daddy's going to go ballistic. I want her to be able to come to me.
Absolutely. Our kids are very smart. They're, when we're unconscious as parents and don't see it, they see it. And they'll make little comments like that. It's lucky that she told your wife. She could have told, a neighbor or their grandma. But that's great feedback to you to say to yourself, wow, I could have probably accomplished that same result from a more powerful way rather than an angry way. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we as human beings unconsciously, we don't know how to deal with something. And because we don't know how to deal with it, but we want to deal with it and address it, we can't find that middle ground where we're really powerful and we can, create results from that place. Sometimes we overshoot it, or we flip the switch and we turn to the nasty, angry, mad place. And that, a lot of times, isn't the best way to accomplish results. Somewhere in the middle there's a powerful Riel that could have walked over there with a calm demeanor and just commanded that, whoever was listening heard what you were saying, took responsibility for it, cleaned it up with you, and made a new commitment to you that, hey, from this point forward, you can count on my kids. I'll keep an eye on them, and we'll have a conversation with them. And it could have landed powerfully, and your daughter would have looked up at you and just would have been batting her eyes going, that's my dad. And now I'm going to go to him for everything, because he handles things in a very professional, powerful way, and he gets things done. And there's a benchmark there for you to hit. But if you don't know how to hit it, or no one taught you how, or you don't have the tools, you're just going to overshoot it every time, and you're going to go to the, rolling up your sleeves and wanting to duke it out, or, wanting to muscle people to create that kind of result.
Well, yeah.
And you're a pretty buff guy. I mean, sure, you can, force your way if you wanted to, but at the end of the day, you can't make people do things that you need or that you want.
And that's the world I grew up in, and so I'm now learning. Another thing was a huge eye-opener for me. It hit me, I meant to share that with you, was, as I'm in this group with these young adults and stuff and feeling vulnerable, and, the ego gets in there, like, they're going to think I'm this big idiot who gets emotional or cry or something. And so we got to know each other through the weekend, and then through several kids, when they were sharing in different situations, would say, I wish my parents were like you. You're like, you're a great dad, that you're here trying to be a better dad for your kid. And, just we create those stories where we're thinking they're going to think less of us, and they were actually thinking more.
That's right.
And I was like,
it's not
wow.
that we create the story.
Yeah.
Our ego creates the story of don't show your vulnerability.
Yeah.
Don't let them see you cry, because why? Crying or vulnerability has been a symbol for a sign of weakness. Mm-hmm. And our spirit is telling you, don't listen to that ego. That's not accurate. What's accurate is you showing them that vulnerability, and you will hook their heart. They will be inspired by that, and they're yearning for you, Riel, to be that vulnerable, loving, caring, compassionate dad, because that's where they feel safe. That's where their spirit is connecting with yours, and they trust you. Where they're not trusting you is when you go to the head and you got all these walls up and your ego's protecting you to keep you safe. It doesn't want you to be that authentic, vulnerable guy. And I don't know how many times I've got to tell you this. That's when you're most powerful. And you got to experience it in real time in that training, because the kids themselves are coming up to you saying, I wish my dad would be like that. And this isn't the only time. You've gotten this feedback previous times too.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's validation for you that, coming from your heart and being vulnerable is what our kids are yearning for. And if you haven't practiced that, it's going to be a challenge for you. And that's what I love. That's why I love the training room, because the training room is like a gym for your emotional wellness. It's a place for you to work out the spiritual and emotional intelligence that we just haven't been given opportunities to work on and to grow and develop.
Well, it's like, this is my world, the physical side. I've known it since I was, crawling, because that's what my dad did. But I now know it's almost like, it's almost like what you do, in my opinion, is more important, because it's if you got the $1 million house, it all looks great on it. You're basically building it on sand if you don't have the working on what you work on, because it's for nothing. It looks good on the outside, but it's like, and how many people I'm sure that you deal with, they look like they have everything on the outside, and when you sit down, they're not complete at all. I can totally see the value. And so to me, it's like, you could see gym memberships, training, private, all day long, all advertisements everywhere. They need to be as much advertising for what you do. People need to be focusing on that.
Here's the belief that I've created, and I'm still working on it, because something I want to shatter and let go. But the belief that I've created is that people aren't interested in working on themselves when they think that everything is going all right. When people don't want to work on something if it's not broken. People don't operate from being proactive. When I operate and offer and invite people to do trainings or come work on yourself, it's kind of like, I got everything. My life's going great. What do I need to work on? People don't respond until they're in dire needs. People don't respond until their son or daughter now is, cutting themselves, or they're overdosing. Now all of a sudden they want to spend $150,000 to cause a shift in their kids. But when they were 12 or 13 years old, to get them to do a leadership development, personal growth training for $50 or $100, they're not aware of it. There's no value for them, because my son's fine. He's the football captain and getting good grades, or my daughter's the cheerleader. So they're measuring their kids based on superficial things, rather than being open to the possibility that there's some emotional growth, some substance, some real golden nuggets that are missing from their kids that you as a parent might not necessarily know how to pull out of them. But this is an interesting conversation. We'll continue it when we come back from the break. Stay tuned for more of My Conscious Dad with Alex Urbina right here in your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.